Welcome to Idle Red Hands, a podcast from Japan about gaming and gamer life. Welcome to Idle Red Hands. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Chris.
And today we're talking to Ken Spencer from Not Games.
Welcome, Ken.
Hello, Jeremy. Hello, Chris.
And he's got a Kickstarter, and we want to find out a little bit more about it.
Well, we are running a Kickstarter campaign to help fund and promote Rocket Age 5e. We are trying to bring the 1938 that never was and the solar system that should have been to the 5th edition of the world's most popular role-playing game that we legally cannot name, but everybody knows what we're talking about.
Yeah, I was going to make a joke about that.
Right. I wonder what system that is.
No idea.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mentioned it last week, but I don't think I gave a decent enough pitch on what Rocket Age is, and you kind of mentioned it in that little intro, but could you give us a bit more information on what exactly Rocket Age is?
Sure. Rocket Age is a pulp sci-fi role-playing game. It is set in 1938, almost 10 years after the Goddard-Einstein-Tesla rocket ship to Mars, which initiated the Rocket Age. In that time, Earthlings have traveled to the hot, useless ball of Mercury, which certainly does not have a secret Nazi base on it, the jungles of Venus, the planet Mars, which has been suffering for quite some time and is in decline and decay, out to the asteroid belt, to Jupiter and its moons, and are exploring beyond to Saturn all the way to Pluto, because in 1938, there are 9 planets.
Yep, Pluto's still a planet.
Right.
Pluto is still a planet. It is science fiction seen through the lens. It's modern science fiction seen through the lens of the sci-fi of the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, even a little bit of 50s Red Scare alien invasion going on there.
Oh, cool.
Can you talk about kind of the origin or the inspiration? Like, how did you create Rocket Age? What were your source inspirations? I mean, some of them are kind of obvious, but I was just curious to get your take on where you found your inspiration for the setting.
Well, I think a lot of it comes from my father's a big sci-fi fan, so I was exposed to it at an early age. I was 3 or 4 when the first Star Wars movie came out, when New Hope came out, and we saw it 7 times.
Mm-hmm. In the theater? In the theater. Years later, I had a VHS tape of it that I watched so often I burned through the tape. Yeah.
I was read Heinlein Starship Troopers, a redacted version, as a bedtime story.
Oh.
Exactly. My father was a big Avalon Hill board gamer,
okay.
And so I certainly played the Starship Troopers board game. Sci-fi was a big deal. Science was a big deal. He used to wake me up at a horrible hour in the morning to watch every shuttle launch.
Oh, wow.
For quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of spurred along my interest in science fiction and sci-fi. As far as Rocket Age specifically, I moved around a lot as a Navy brat, and there were several times that one of the local TV stations would run either early in the morning while I'm getting ready for school or in the afternoon right when I got back, the old Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers serials.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd watch those and rerun Battlestar Galactica, the short-lived Buck Rogers TV series from the late 70s. And I love that style of sci-fi. I've pursued it since then, and literature and whatever videos and films I could find. I'm a big fan of the pulp era, of the 20s and 30s, of the style of the retrofuturism.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly, as much as I love sci-fi, as much as I love military sci-fi, there is often a sense, I feel, in sci-fi since the early 80s on, of a loss of the wonder and the sense of exploration and discovery. And that drove a lot of the concepts of Rocket Age. So these ideas sort of just kind of merged together. I'm a big pulp gamer. One of my gaming groups, when I said, hey, let's do a pulp game, they said, look, you have ran a pulp Ancient Rome game for us. You have ran a pulp fantasy game. You have ran a pulp version of L5R for us. Can we have something that's not quite pulp?
And you said no.
I thought, yeah, well, I already have. No, we can't. Sorry.
So is this a story about how you found a new gaming group?
No. Some of those guys I still game with. It's been the same group here in Vincennes for the 12 years I've lived here.
Oh,
And it's gone through a rotation. We're down to one of the old guard plus me, and then everyone else has been with us. And I say old guard, and I realize some of them, the new players, have been with us for 6 or 7 years. So really,
they're medium guard now.
they're medium guard. They're medium guard. But no, so putting all of that together, pulp and sci-fi, and looking at it through a more modern eye, I realized that the things I loved about the genre were being overwritten in many ways by the things I didn't like.
Right.
At least in other people's perception. The lack of diversity, the inherent hypocrisy. The blatant hypocrisy in a person touting these noble truths, while at the same time, the majority of the people in the world are not benefiting from anything close to that.
Right.
And I wanted to, in a way, rehabilitate the genre.
Okay.
With my own take on the setting, while at the same time modernizing it. So Rocket Age has hope, it has honor and dignity, but you can't have those things without the counter, without the exploitation of workers in the mines on Venus, without the threat of fascism rising in the 30s. So it's blending those two things together to make a coherent setting.
I found out about Rocket Age from running a different sort of pulp sci-fi campaign and mined the Rocket Age books for like setting and adventure ideas, but I've actually not played the original Vortex system.
And the Vortex system came from Cubicle 7 originally?
Yes, it was created by Dave Chapman for Cubicle 7 for their Doctor Who Adventures in Time and Space game, as well as their short-lived Primeval role-playing game.
Oh.
And when I originally wrote Rocket Age for Cubicle 7, we used that system modified to give more of a cinematic pulpy feel, to put in a little more action, a little more in the way of guns and daring do than you see in Doctor Who.
Right.
Right.
So no sonic screwdrivers.
No sonic screwdrivers, no. No.
So I guess that brings up a question I had, because when I first saw this, I thought, oh, okay, it's for 5e. I'm curious what, if anything, you've done to the 5e system, I guess in a nutshell, to make it more pulpy and action adventure, since you just mentioned you had to do the same thing to the Vortex system to fit the setting better.
For starters, Rocket Age 5e is not a conversion. We didn't just take a set of numbers and turn them into another set of numbers. It's an adaptation. We've tried to stay as broadly compatible with the 5e engine and with all of your 5e books that you might have, while at the same time being Rocket Age and keeping the same play style, keeping the setting. So we have adjusted 5e where needed, and in a few places we've tweaked the setting a little bit, such as adding more variety of equipment. Vortex system, which we're branding as Rocket Age Classic, is more of a fly by the seat of your pants narrative or cinematic system and doesn't go in a lot of detail about equipment, whereas Dungeons and Dragons and its various iterations does.
Right.
So we've had a little more detail there. We've also added a little more in the way of psychic powers, which have always been in Rocket Age, but we've enhanced their visibility and their general use. As far as your original question, things that we did, well, first of all, we changed the word race to species because that fits much better.
Yes.
We've got 17 playable species in Rocket Age 5e. We've got 5 classes that are designed from the ground up to give a very pulpy feel.
Okay.
Such things as the soldier class. It's not just the fighter redone, especially with the subclasses. The captain, who could be a Rocket Ranger captain, a Martian warlord, whatever you want it to be, it's the basis of that character class, that character subclass, is the ability to issue orders. You don't direct what another player is doing. That would be taking away their agency. But you control a battlefield by encouraging your allies, giving them tactical options, that sort of thing, which is something you're not really seeing in 5e a whole lot. Our biggest, with the classes, our biggest divergence from 5e is with the scientist. The scientist is based around their discoveries and inventions, especially the engineer subclass. It's not designed as a caster. None of our classes are designed with the idea that this is the casting class. We wanted to get away from that idea and make sure that everybody has something pulpy, something cinematic they can do.
It kind of sounds like the Rocket Age classes for Rocket Age 5e are a bit more like archetypes. And then the subclasses kind of allow you to not specialize, but I guess pull out distinct elements from each of those archetypes that you wanted to focus on as a player.
Exactly. That's the way we felt that it would be able to meld the class concept to the setting. For example, in our Scoundrel class, Scoundrel is your general shady type character. Well, a con artist is very different from a cat burglar or second story man. And their subclasses reflect that. Now, their commonality is that they have the I know a guy feature at a very early level, which lets you contact the local criminal underground and gain narrative or mechanical advantages or just a couple pieces of equipment for a limited time, or, 1d4 mook level thugs.
Was there anything that you had to lose in adapting it to 5e that you wish you could have brought over, or anything that actually improved once you weren't using the Vortex system?
There wasn't anything that we lost. We wanted to keep the entirety of the Rocket Age setting. Mm-hmm. The only things we could have lost is Vortex is heavily driven by character traits, especially with the way we do it in Rocket Age Classic, by species traits. And we quickly saw that some of these species traits just don't make sense in a 5e system. So we had to scale back a little bit of the power here and there, or just the sheer number of things that a species could do.
I see. Yeah.
At the same time, one of the things we did was in the original Rocket Age core book, we had the Ioites. The moon of Io, centuries ago, millennia ago, no one really knows. But the original Ioites got into a conflict with the Europans. The Europans resolved the conflict by bombing Io with radiological, chemical, and mutagenic bombs, turning Io into a post-apocalyptic wasteland and the Ioites into hunched, pus-riddled, disgusting, savage, feral creatures. But they have good hearts.
Okay.
Well, as Rocket Age developed over the years, we added Heroes of the Solar System, which expanded on the concept of the Ioites a little bit and talked about how your character could be a mutant of Io, where you have these strange, weird mutations. And we really liked that, so we decided to make that a core concept for the Ioites in Rocket Age 5e. Okay. So your Ioite character at character creation picks from a list of mutations. Oh, nice. And then as you gain levels, you continue to mutate because your genetic structure is unstable. So you gain some additional class features. You get fewer up front, but not class, species features. You get fewer up front, but you get more as you progress.
And I'm guessing they're kind of cool mutations rather than actual ones that would result.
Yeah. Guess what? You only have one eye. No, we're not playing old school Gamma World here.
I was just going to say that Gamma World. Yeah, roll too many mishaps on the mutation table and just scrap the whole species. Yep.
Exactly. So you get to choose. They all have some sort of benefit. Some of them more mechanical than others. Some more story based than others.
Cool. You mentioned that as the Ioite gains levels, they gain mutations, and that kind of made me think the typical structure of the world's greatest role-playing game kind of goes from 0 to hero. Does Rocket Age 5e follow that progression? Or I guess are the other level progressions a bit more flattened? Because one of the things I took away from pulp games, not necessarily Rocket Age, but other pulp games as well, is that the characters don't change a lot in pulp media, which can be a real benefit because it allows you to kind of jump around in time and the characters are still largely the same. Thinking about like Indiana Jones, where you could, do, I guess, like Temple of Doom, Last Crusade and Ark. They kind of jumped around in time, but the characters are largely the same power-wise. Does Rocket Age 5e do sort of follow that pulp tradition, or is it a bit more like the world's greatest role-playing game where, you start kind of at bottom level and by level 20, you're kind of, I guess, a god of the setting?
We tried that in both ways in playtesting and in development. And there are certain things you can't get away from if you're doing the 5th iteration of a game invented by Gary Gygax.
Right.
And we decided that we wanted to keep the level advancement, but we wanted to give Rocket Age characters a little something extra at the start. So all of our backgrounds, and we have several backgrounds to tie the characters into the setting. That's our first goal in designing a background, is how does this tie the character to the setting? All of the backgrounds, the background features have more oomph in them, more an actual mechanical benefit as well as a narrative benefit, as opposed to regular 5e, which it has a vague, your character is good at these sorts of situations sometimes when the moon is right and this happens.
Nice.
A prime example is the Rocket Ranger background. Rocket Rangers are core to the Rocket Age setting. The two go hand in hand. The Rocket Rangers are a American military group, but they often disregard their military orders or commands from people in the government because they're more interested in doing what's right than in doing what's by the books or by our orders. So, well, and that's Rocket Age. We've taken the square-jawed hero who gives a great speech about truth, justice, honor, and such to their word, and that's the way you're going to be then.
Nice.
So the Rocket Ranger background has the feature Rocket Rangers Away, the battle cry of the Rocket Rangers. So once per episode, and we've added episode as one of the time phases in 5e, once per episode, you can yell out Rocket Rangers Away, and it says that the player has to say Rocket Rangers Away, and you give all of your allies within a certain range some temporary hit points, and they may use their reaction to make a dash action.
Nice. That's, thematically, that's excellent.
Yeah, you explained what I was going to ask if the player actually had to say it, because it sounded like it, and then, you clarified.
The player has to say it. It's right there in black and white.
I do like that kind of stuff, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And so for the Kickstarter, is it just the core book that is available that's adapted? Or because I know Rocket Age already has a lot of support, like you have a lot of supporting books for Mars and Venus. What is included in this Kickstarter?
In the Kickstarter, you get the core book. Mm-hmm. Our stretch goals are right now, the first 3 stretch goals are adventures.
Oh, great.
2 of them brand new for Rocket Age that have never been published before. First one is by Ed Greenwood, who it turns out is a Rocket Age fan.
Nice.
That was a big day for me when I talked to him about Rocket Age. He says, "Oh yeah, I love it. I'm a fan." But really?
Wow, that's excellent. Yeah.
So the first one is Bold Brigands of the Belt by Ed Greenwood. Then we have Lost Cities of the Ancients, which is an adaptation of one of our first Rocket Age adventures to 5e. And then our third stretch goal is Psychic Scions of Ceres by James Spawn, who's written adventures for Rocket Age 5e back in the Cubicle 7 days. So with the core book, you'll get, of course, the stretch goals. Mm-hmm. And the core book has everything. All you need to play it is either the basic rules or the SRD for the 5th edition of a game once invented in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin.
Right. I was wondering how many times we're going to come up with new ways to say the game we're talking about.
I've got a whole list of them.
Nice. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask whether everything was contained in this Rocket Age 5e core book, or if you needed another game product to play it. And you just said you could either play it with the PHB or the freely available SRD rules.
Exactly. And we have, as I said, 17 species, 5 classes, over a dozen backgrounds, pages of equipment, as my layout artist pointed out the other day. A lot of equipment. I've been asked not to write equipment chapters anymore, but that's not an option. As well as psychic powers rules that allow any character to have psychic powers, but you have to trade something off to get them.
Okay.
Full vehicle combat rules from motorcycles on up to rocket ships. So we have a scalable vehicle combat and maneuver system.
Oh, nice.
As well as ancient artifacts. The way we did ancient artifacts is it's not just a static roll. It is a roll where, depending on how far above or below the DC your result is, determines what you learn about this item. And yeah, so we've got that, monsters, the entire Rocket Age setting, all in one book.
Excellent.
As far as the other Rocket Age classic titles, Blood Red Mars, Lure of Venus, Imperial Jupiter, we will be adapting all of those in the coming months and releasing them.
One of the things that interested me about this Kickstarter, and as I said, like 5e of the world's most popular role-playing game, I understand why you would adapt a game to use its rules. I mean, it's kind of the lingua franca of RPGs. Everybody has heard about it. Everybody plays it. So adapting it to that rule set gets more eyes on it and kind of, makes more people aware of it. I was really happy to see that moving forward, you're intending to produce 2 copies of each product. One for Rocket Age Classic, which uses the Vortex system, and one for Rocket Age 5e, which obviously uses the 5e rules. What brought you to that decision?
Well, from the beginning, when we decided that we wanted to adapt Rocket Age to 5e, which we did for the reasons you mentioned, but also because we kept getting asked by people, could you do this in a different system? And I've heard this at conventions for 3 years now. I only play D&D.
Right.
And we want Rocket Age to be in everybody's game shelf because we love it, because we think everybody will enjoy it. But going forward, yes, we are not leaving anybody behind. We don't want to leave our old fans behind to grab a bunch of new fans. We want to invite more people to the party, and we want to keep the party going. But what really clinched it was when I was first talking to Ed Greenwood. He contributed to the Tales from the Rocket Age fiction anthology. That was the first project we worked together on at the same time.
Cool.
We had worked together on other projects, Northland Saga that I wrote for Frog God Games, but not together, if that makes any sense. He did his part, I did my part, and I found out afterwards, like, oh, I worked with Ed Greenwood. But he told me that a new edition is a way out for old fans as much as it is a way in for new fans.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, in that case, our decision to not abandon our existing fan base is the right one.
Know what you said about an old or a new edition being an exit point for old fans. Yeah, I think that kind of got proven when that game developed in Lake Geneva moved to 5th edition.
Right.
Exactly. And that's just the way of the business. And we don't want to, like I said, we don't want to leave anybody behind. And we love the Vortex system. We love Rocket Age Classic. I've been working on it for 6-7 years now.
Wow.
I have no intention to abandon that work.
So I know you said it's not a conversion where you take one set of numbers and kind of change them into another set of numbers, but an adaptation. There's going to be some time before new 5e and Vortex products start coming out for Rocket Age. Do you plan on releasing any kind of like adaptation materials, or I don't want to say a conversion guide, but are you going to put out something that would allow new 5e players to use the old classic Rocket Age material and adventure modules?
I wish we could, but the systems are just so different that the idea of this is an X and this is a Y, you have to go through almost case by case and instance by instance with it. And at that point, you've written another book.
Right. It's more like players who want to use Rocket Age Classic material for 5e stuff are going to just have to take the spirit and flavor of the module or material and then plug it into the 5e rules rather than being able to convert anything.
Exactly, until we get all the books converted.
Right.
Or I should say all the books adapted, which should go fairly quickly because Vortex is not a very rules-heavy system, that is. So, for example, Blood Red Mars, there's maybe 12.5 ancient artifacts and an adventure. There's a lot of detail on that on the Chennari cast on Mars, and that gives us a point to add some rules sections there and take some rule sections out and make them 5e.
Right.
But we're not foreseeing it to be a lengthy process.
Awesome.
We're going to do the big books first, the planetary source books, Blood Red Mars, Lure of Venus, Imperial Jupiter, and then get to work on the adventures.
Wow. Was it difficult for Why Not Games to get the rights from Cubicle 7 so that you could do this and have the control to do the adaptation to 5e?
I contacted the owner of Cubicle 7, Dom McDowell Thomas, and I brought it up with him, feeling him out, see if he was interested in it. And he was, and we negotiated the price. And we negotiated when it would happen, and negotiations stalled there for a while. It's a common trait of his that he will get distracted and then forget about something for a couple months. especially if he doesn't want to deal with it right away.
Mhm.
We had given up hope and had moved on, and we were looking at publishing our Weird Races series for 5e, starting with Catterday.
Mhm.
And we're moving along with that when, out of the blue, he got back in contact with me and said, okay, I'm willing to sign the contract with these changes. And we were acceptable to the changes and negotiated a payment. And within a matter of days, we had all the files. All the stock was being transferred to our ownership, by which I mean a freight truck came down my street and unloaded a giant pallet of books.
Right.
Wow.
Which hopefully you had space for.
Yes, we did. And payment was made and the deal was done and both parties walked away.
Wow. Awesome.
Nice. So there was a license involved with continuing to use the Vortex system then, or was that a separate negotiation, or was that kind of included in that?
That is included in that.
All right.
We have a free license of the Vortex system that should go on as long as both parties are happy with it.
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
great.
Basically, we can't publish something using Vortex that's not Rocket Age. That would be a separate license.
Mhm.
And we can't publish anything that would besmirch the image of Cubicle 7.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, good. Was there anything that you want people to know about the Kickstarter? Is there anything that is newly available, or is Kickstarter exclusive, I guess, is something people should be looking at right now?
The main thing is, in addition to, well, two main things. First of all, once we start hitting the stretch goals, anything that's on a stretch goal that is not already available in Vortex will be available through the Kickstarter as an add-on in Vortex.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh, cool.
We are not leaving anybody behind, and we are not going to have this cool, awesome Kickstarter and say, sorry, not for you.
Good idea. Yeah.
The other thing is that we have included in our add-ons for the Kickstarter not only Tales from the Rocket Age, which is the short fiction anthology, but also our 3 Weird Races for 5e. These are races that are meant for a fantasy world. They're not Rocket Age canon, but they're 5e. We think people will enjoy them. And at your table, you can do whatever you want. If you want anthropomorphic cats running around called the Catterday, then find a planet or a moon and stick them there. The same with Surreal Bearfolk of the North. If you want to put bears in your Rocket Age game, Alien Bears, then pick a planet, maybe one of the outer planets. And the same thing for Little Gray Aliens, which will be released through to the Kickstarter backers first, but then will be released at Gen Con, which are your little gray aliens from mythology, legend, movies, X-Files, that sort of stuff.
X-Files. Yeah.
Right.
That's more of a sci-fi thing. If you want to introduce that into your game, feel free. But we've added those in because we think people will enjoy them.
Oh, that's great. Are there any other projects that you're working on? I know that right now the Kickstarter is your big focus, but are there any other things that are in the works that people should know about?
Yes. Right now we have art and writing going for 2 more of our Weird Races series.
Cool.
Prehistorica, which looks at your standard core fantasy races, but what would be the earlier evolutions? What does a proto-gnome look like?
Oh,
That sort of thing.
Mhm.
Dear to my heart because my background as an archaeologist.
Oh, cool.
And Night Folk, which is also for Weird Races 5e. It is a book of your classic horror monsters reimagined as playable races. So there's a vampire, there's a werewolf, there's a Frankenstein's monster in there, but new takes on those creatures.
nice.
As far as Rocket Age goes, we have the Kickstarter. We're leaving a hole in our schedule to see what happens with the stretch goals. If not, either way, we're going to have the adaptations of the planetary source books and adventures that already exist. And our next project, we're discussing that, the 3 of us, between Dangers of the Solar System, which would be a monster and villain book, and the Planetary Exploration Catalog, which will be a tech book, and which we are going to be promising a rocket ship design system,
Nice.
which means I'll have to actually bring out all of my notes on how to design a rocket ship in 2 different systems and reveal them to the world.
Now, I found villain and antagonist book to be really useful because when you're starting a new game, that helps at the power level. Kind of gives you an idea of what is easy, medium, difficult kind of encounters, and what people should aim for when they're building their own NPCs and antagonists.
Exactly. And we think it'll be very popular because it'll be offered in Classic and 5e. And 5e people love monsters no matter where they come from.
Mhm.
And there's been a strong push from the classic fans that we need to add a little more alien creatures.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
Our other big plan is for Edge of the Solar System, which covers the outer planets. And we're still working through on that. We have an idea what we want to do. We're just trying to see if the logistics are going to work out.
I guess you don't have to tell us, but is there a 10th Planet X?
Not at this point, but I've been reading up on the Orc Cloud, and there's some interesting things there that we may have to bring in.
Ah, cool.
Nice.
Oh, and there was, though, in Rocket Age, a 10th planet, Ares.
Okay.
That's where the asteroid belt is now.
Oh, okay.
The Arisians are not a playable species.
Mm.
Yet.
Yeah.
The Kickstarter is running now for, I think you've got like 20 some days left. So if anybody
We
is...
have 22 days left in the Kickstarter.
Okay, good.
And we have about $90 left to hit our funding.
Oh, excellent.
So we're fairly confident we're going to fund.
Nice.
We would like to hit the stretch goals that are listed. If those are hit, we have some additional stretch goals in mind, including a brand new Rocket Age small source book, the Rocket Rangers Handbook. And we encourage people to back the Kickstarter. If you're not going to back it, then tell your friends about it. Share it on social media all over the world. And we hope to see you at the next time.
Excellent.
Because this isn't the end. This is just the beginning of a brand new way to play Rocket Age.
Excellent. Yeah, I hope this brings a lot of new people into the setting. I think it's a really fun, and I loved your description about what was missing and what you wanted to put in there, and that is definitely in Rocket Age. So it's nice to see.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your time. And please, we'll put a link in the description for the Kickstarter itself. So please check that out, as well as a link to Why Not Games, so you can see the classic version and what else they're doing. And that'll give you a little bit of what's available through the Kickstarter and the stretch goals as well. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. It was great to talk to you.
Thanks for, especially given the time zone difference.
Thank you for having me on.
Drive-through RPG. We average 9 new titles a day. That's over 60 a week. And we've got well over 15,000 RPG titles online right now. Drive-through RPG, the one true source for RPGs.
Idle Red Hands, recorded in Kobe, Japan. See us online at www.idleredhands.com. Music provided by Tripod Jimmy, and the song was Roadkill. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.